Check, check. There, now you can hear me, I think. Okay, so wanted to do a few clarifications and from previous videos, as well as some information from an affiliate, New Aqua. They I asked them some questions about how does this this water, what's the pore size and does it filter out radionuclides and all that kind of stuff, because I was telling you about it. And so all good news on that front. Let me pull up this email here and I'll just kind of read you what he said. You guys hear me okay in the chat there? I'm going to pop this up here real quick so I can see your guys' responses a little better. Hopefully you can. If you can't, then let me know. All right. Yeah, it's going. Okay. All right. So they said that their New Aqua, the affiliate link will be in the description below. That's not all we're going to talk about, though. There's a couple other important things, so stick with me real quick. I just wanted to get this out of the way real fast. Their reverse osmosis membrane has a pore size of approximately 0.0001 microns and will remove 99% of radionuclides. So that's awesome. I thought that was really cool. And let's see. Oh, he said pretty much the one thing that people should know about this is that, yes, these systems are effective at removing radionuclides, but it's important to keep up on your filter changes and periodically keep your eye on the TDS levels. That's total dissolved solids. Total dissolved solids, just so you know, is not an indicator that the water is safe to drink. It's just an indicator of how well the filter is doing its job. A good rule of thumb is to check your TDS levels every 3 to 6 months. However, if there is a situation like a long-term power outage or some type of contamination in the local water supply, I would check my TDS on a weekly basis just to make sure that there are no spikes. If so, it's always worth keeping a spare set of filters on hand. The integrity of the system really depends on keeping up with the maintenance. If you keep up the maintenance with your filter changes, the system will last a lifetime. Speaking of which, this is what I thought was the cool part. I haven't heard other companies doing this, so I thought this was kind of neat. He said they actually just rolled out a new filter subscription service to help their customers keep up to date with their filter changes. That way, if they purchase a new system, they have the option to subscribe to the Filter Club. If they do that, then they'll send an extra set of filters to you so that you always have a spare on hand, and they'll automatically send out a new set of filters when it's time for the customer to replace them for the 6 months and 1 year maintenance cycles. So they pretty much automate all of it, and that way it makes it as simple as possible for you to keep up on the system and everything like that. I thought that was pretty cool. If the customer signs up for this service, the system is also warranted for the lifetime of their ownership of it. I don't think there's any other water system like that, a 7-stage reverse osmosis system like that, that's guaranteed for life. That's a pretty, as long as you're doing their filter system or their subscription. Let's see. Also, if they sign up, the system will be warranted for lifetime, and they'll receive 10% discount on all future filter replacements. That'll be grandfathered in for them as long as they own their system. So, yeah, and then he said as far as he knows, they're the only company that does that as well. So that's kind of cool. I thought that was kind of a neat thing. I did a little quick video on installing that system. It's really easy to install, and it's a great way to make sure that your water's safe in a crazy situation like this. Now, let me get back to the other two things that I want to talk about, which were really important. So when I did the whole lesson on removing fallout from water, one thing that I didn't mention, and I should have, is that the water filters eventually, even the improvised ones and any of the ones in your house, eventually they are going to start to gather a certain amount of fallout from the water. And so those will become radioactive over time. So you want to make sure that those are not stored close to where you sleep or someplace where you're going to spend a lot of time. So you might want to bring them out in the garage or, someplace where they're going to be kind of off on their own or whatever. And then when you change them, then you want to go ahead and bury them and, put them somewhere where it's not going to be a problem. All right. So if you guys got any questions about any of this stuff, just let me know and I'll try to answer it. The next thing is that tritium, basically, it's almost impossible to remove tritium from water. And hold on, cancel the update. Yes. Sorry, so my computer was trying to update on me. And if I understand it correctly, I think tritium is like a hydrogen isotope, and it is very, very difficult to get out of water. And I think in 2016, they did actually invent a process to be able to do it. But it isn't easy. So basically, tritium is not going to be able to be removed from water. However, it's a low-level beta emitter, and it does have a long half-life, though. And we actually, in most of the water in the country, there is some levels of tritium left over from nuclear tests back in the 60s. So the good news, or the bad news is that you ain't going to get everything out of your water, no matter what you do. But the good news is that if you reduce it as much as possible, going through the steps that I, kind of talked about, you're probably not going to have any short or medium term health issues, So now long term, it's hard to say if it would increase risk of cancer and all that kind of stuff. There's no guarantee that way, but not drinking water will certainly lead to death. And I haven't seen any other recommendations on any other ways to make it safer than what I presented to you guys. And if I do find something, I will obviously let you know. But as far as I know, that's going to be the best way to do it. There's really not, anything that's going to make it 100%. Yep. Even with the Berkey, Tammy, even with the Berkey or the Alexa Pure Pro, it doesn't matter. It's tritium. Like I said, it's a hydrogen isotope. And when it's in water, it's just really difficult, apparently, to get it out of there. So I don't think there's any filter that will remove it totally from water. You might reduce it some, but you're not going to get it totally out, So that's why having a multi-layer system like what I laid out in that video before is what I think is the best policy. But the reason I'm bringing this up to you guys is because I failed to mention that the tritium in that video, and so I wanted to make sure that I let you know about it. But that doesn't mean that you can't live. You'll still be fine. You'll still be able to, go on. And I mean, if you don't drink, you will die from hydration 100%. Having some low levels of, a low level emitter radiation, at small doses and all that kind of stuff, it's probably not going to you won't even probably notice it, but it is there. So I just wanted to, bring it up. So distillation is the same way, and it has something to do. And I'm not a chemist, so I don't really know 100%, but it has something to do with the way that tritium and hydrogen and water bond and that kind of stuff. I don't fully understand all of it. I don't fully get all the science of it. But it's my understanding that distillation is the same thing. It's still not going to actually get everything. I mean, if you wanted to add another layer of distillation after doing all the filtering, you might be there. I don't know. But that at that point, you're getting to the point where it's so labor intensive that it's probably just not realistic to carry on for a long time, because the half-life of tritium, if I remember correctly, is like 26 years or something like that. Like, it's a long ass time. So I don't think you're not going to get around it. You know, like I said, it's in our municipal water systems and all that stuff now all over. So, you know, yeah. Okay. Well, that's interesting. Distillator magic. I didn't realize that. He said that you can drink deuterium and tritium. It's stable. So that's good stuff. I'm not aware of that, and I didn't see that in the research that I was doing, but if you've got some link or something to that or whatever, that would be cool. But anyway, it's not going to hurt you. It's not a big deal, but I didn't want you to be under the impression that the methods that I was explaining to you were going to be 100%, even though it's a small clarification. If I get something wrong, I just want to make sure that I clarify it to you. So you're using the things that we talked about are going to be the best methods to get there. But it's just not everything. There was one other thing that I wanted to talk about. Oh yeah. I had somebody comment on the inverse square law, and or basically the distance. Oh, I just got a question on that video, actually. Let me answer that one real quick. It says, how long would you need to filter the water for, is what it's asking. And they say, after 3 weeks, would you still have to do this? And is a filter straw useful? Would freshly collected rainwater be okay? All good questions. How long would you have to do it? You would probably want to be filtering your water for at least a year. I would think that you would want to filter it for quite a long time, just because you don't know, with rain and all that kind of stuff and the nuclear fallout that's going to be up in the atmosphere and nuclear winter and all this kind of stuff that's happening. You're going to have to do it for a while. And that's why I recommended the kind of like the 5-gallon bucket type setups and stuff, because you're going to be able to do a little bit more throughput. You're going to be able to get a little bit more quantity. So filter straws are not useful. And here's why. I mean, there are some filter straws out there that have some of those resin beads in there and stuff like that that'll help remove positively charged particles and all that. But you're having to actually get down on the ground, essentially, and drink from a water source, and that's not good, because then you're just laying down on fallout, and it's not a good system. So you just want to kind of stay away from that, probably. And then the last question is would freshly collected rainwater be okay? No. And here's why. I believe they call it, there's a term that they use for it, rain out. I think it's called rain out or something like that. It's essentially that as the rain comes down, there could be those fallout particles in the rainwater itself. So rainwater catchment is a great way to get water, but you cannot be guaranteed that rainwater from your rainwater catchment does not have fallout in it. So you still want to filter it no matter what. So I don't know if that viewer, Ali Karavik, if you're watching right now, that's the answer to your question. The question that the other guy said, let me see if I can find it here real quick. If you guys got any questions, stick them in there and I'll try to answer them. I don't know where it's at. It's gotten buried. Anyway, the basics of what he was saying is that, hey, your information on the 10-foot rule is not correct, and it is correct. I've double checked it, and I'll give you an example of how it works. Let me pull this website up and read from it. This is from, it's a whole full paper from a college, University of Florida, I think. I'll try to put this down in the description below so you guys can see it. Talking about protection from radiation. And okay. So when we're talking about distance, and it also lays out exactly what I laid out to you guys. The three things that you need to factor in are time, distance, and shielding. And you want to use all three of those together, not just one or the other. You want to use all three. So here's what they say about distance. The amount of radiation an individual receives will also depend on how close the person is to the source. And then they explain the inverse square law. Point sources, like fallout, of X-rays, gamma radiation follow the inverse square law, which states that the intensity of the radiation, I, decreases in proportion to the inverse of the distance from the source, D, squared. And then they give an example down here, and they say, as an example, the exposure rate 1 foot from a source that is 500 millirads per hour, what would you expect the exposure rate to be 3 feet from the source? And the answer to that is 55.6 millirads per hour. So it's about 1/10 just going 3 feet away. So if you move 10 feet away, you're going to be a lot closer to a 90% reduction, basically. But that doesn't mean that you should only use distance as a factor. Unless you were only able to get into a building that didn't have any other material that you could put around you, then what you would want to do is just stay in the center of the building. You know what I'm saying? Like if you didn't have anything, then that's fine, use distance. But the main factor, the main reason that we talk about this is because if fallout is attracting around all the edges of your building, okay, if you got like a rectangle building or whatever the case may be, you don't want to be up close to one side. You want to be in the center if possible, and then build up the mass around you as close to your little area as possible in the center. And that way, when the photons hit you, they're already weaker from traveling through the distance. Just wait it out with time. So then you've used all three: time, distance, and shielding. So I hope that makes sense. I don't know if I'm just not explaining it right. You guys can let me know if you need to. Okay, let me see what questions you guys got here. Paul Frank says, could you or have you done a video on the 5-gallon bucket system you mentioned? So I did a video talking about how to construct it, giving you all the layers and all that kind of stuff and exactly how to do it. But I didn't demonstrate it because I don't have like the resin beads and all that kind of stuff here because, well, honestly, because I have a well and I'm probably not going to use that method personally. But I could potentially do one if you guys really want to see one, but it's really pretty easy to do. I mean, the video that I did talking about water, it was just like last week, I think. It explains everything step by step. So it should get you where you need to go. All right. Okay, let's see here. Desolator Magic says, critical thing number one, we are all partying at Jay's house. Buffalo Bob says, I recognize you from the movie Pineapple Express. That's too funny. Actually, it's not the first time people said I look like him, but I don't see it, but whatever. Okay, I'm going to do some research on that deuterium and tritium. That's good information to know that it's a stable isotope. Let's see. Oh, the other thing I was going to want to kind of say too is that whenever we're talking about general rules here, it's important to understand that kind of what we're trying to do is just give generalities, right? Because every single thing, your situation is going to be completely different based off of where your house is, how far you are from a detonation, where you are in relation to the heavy fallout cloud versus the lighter fallout cloud. How, like there's so many variables that it's impossible for me to say, with any precision, like, hey, this X, Y, and Z is what you will experience. That's not how it works. All this stuff is mostly based off of, a lot of it goes back to the research that was done during the civil defense era in the 60s. And they're trying to give generalities for people who lived basically to the point where if your windows, like if your house wasn't on fire, and you weren't that close to the blast where your house is catching on fire from the heat of it all, then that's the advice is kind of like from those people on out. So you might have some broken windows, might need to seal up your windows or whatever, but your house you weren't so close that the thermal blast or the thermal wave from the detonation is affecting you. So people who are outside of that is kind of where these generalities apply towards. If your house is closer or in the wave, or it's so close it's catching fire from the blast and all that kind of stuff, your radiation levels are going to be way higher, way more significant, and none of this stuff's going to really apply. It's more along the lines of the people around the city in the suburbs, that are further removed. This is all trying to go towards. Okay. What's up, T Stark? So, okay, he says, what's the best backup for electric pressure switch or well pump? Well, I mean, if you just wanted to have a backup, just get a duplicate of what you have as far as what your switch is on your pressure tank. If your house is protected with an EMP shield, then you don't have to worry about it going out or anything like that. If it was a high altitude detonation, or if you were closer, and that is another thing to talk about real quick too, is that a localized detonation, even at ground level, you're still going to have an EMP at a closer range to where the bomb goes off. It's not going to expand as far. It's only going to go line of sight, basically. But that could be, depending on the terrain and all that kind of stuff, that might be 15, 20 miles outside of the detonation. So even if it isn't a high altitude burst, you can still get a localized EMP effect from a small one. If you guys want to get an EMP shield for your house, you can do that at empshield.com. Use the discount code Reality Survival. It'll save you $50 per unit, which is kind of cool. And the other thing is too, T Stark, is if you have let's say your pressure tank went bad, right? Basically, or your switch went bad, or your tank, deflated, or it didn't work, or whatever, for some other reason, maybe it was just old. You can also still just pump water in using the pressure of the well pump itself. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to go through the pressure tank. It's just that if you do that, you're going to you're going to probably wear out your well pump motor sooner than you normally would have, but it would work. Okay. I've never heard that. Into the Wilderness asked, is it true to avoid calcium-based foods or drinks afterwards? I don't think that is the case. I don't know why it would be, because one of the chelating agents that you can use to help reduce radiation absorption is like Tums, which is, I think, like, isn't it calcium carbonate or something like that? So I'm not sure about that. I don't know. Yeah, Emergency Survival Tips says Putin's going to have to sell his nukes on Craigslist after the economic damage. I tell you what, man, I've been reading a few books. The Accidental Superpower, Disunited Nations. Both of those are by Peter Zehan, and then now I'm reading one from George Friedman. And what's the name of it, real quick? Oh, The Storm Before the Calm. And I'll tell you what, Russia and China, they are screwed. They're in a bad situation, man. I mean, they really are. When you look at their demographics, when you look at all the geopolitical factors that are affecting those countries, by 2030, like, Russia might not even be a country. As crazy as that sounds, they might not even exist anymore. China probably still will, but they're probably going to have significant problems because they are literally on the verge of collapse as it is. In the next, by 2030, there's a very high chance that China is going to entirely implode, which is just nuts, because it's so funny, because it's so counter to the message that we hear everybody talk about how China's a rising power and all this kind of stuff, and they're going to overtake our economy and all this garbage. It's all a big shell game, and they're not in anywhere close to as good of a position as we are. And as the United States starts to pull out of the Bretton Woods Agreement, which we are, there are going to be a lot of countries in the world, they're going to be feeling the pain. And the United States we're going to go through a tumultuous period between now and 2030, but we are set up way better long-term than anybody else on the planet. I mean, really a lot better shape than anybody else on the planet. Other countries like Australia, France, Argentina, there are a few places that are also situationed pretty well, but nobody's even close to as good as us. All right. I would highly recommend those books, by the way, if you okay, I'll catch back some of these questions real quick. Debbie Rogers says, can we get wet water out of a drill well with no electricity? Yes, you can. I did a video a while back. I think it was on Apocalypse well pumps, and that they have it's a small system. I think it pulls out only a couple liters at a time. So depending on how deep your well is, I mean, you gotta have to think about how practical it would be. But you can actually, even with the wellhead and stuff in there and the well pump motor in it, you can snake this thing down through the pipe and be able to get water and pull it back up, and then do that several times. Otherwise, you have to remove your pump and some of the piping that's stuffed in there, and you can get a bigger, what's called a well bucket. And I think the ones from Lehman's.com, they will remove, I've got one of them, they'll remove about 2 gallons at a time. And so, like, my well right now is only 42 feet deep, so that's no big deal. But when I was in Cheyenne, it was 330 feet deep. So I had a couple of rolls of rope that were each 300 feet long, just to be able to get down, to where the water was and all that kind of stuff. It was kind of crazy. But yeah, you can get it out. You just got to make sure you have a manual well pump. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so DeCracken says, will wind blow fallout dust around for a longer time? Yes. There's going to be, I mean, it all depends, right? Like if it's a single detonation, it's not really that big of a deal. If it's 100 nukes, then it's something that we're going to be dealing with for a long time, no matter what. It's not something that we can't overcome, though. If it's a full out, all out exchange where, all 1,500 missiles from each country both go here and there, well, then, yeah, that's not going to be a great situation for anybody and be pretty tough. But again, it still doesn't mean that you couldn't survive. There definitely are places where, you probably wouldn't be targeted and all that kind of stuff. It would change life as we know it, and most people would die and all that. But it's not like it's unsurvivable. And a full out exchange like that is just so not likely. If anything, it's going to be a small tactical exchange or a limited exchange. It's not going to be all nuts like that. And I say that's if it happened. There's a better than 95% chance in my view that it's not going to happen no matter what. So my dogs are going crazy as usual. I think I think Putin is going to go down gracefully. I think right now he's already stepping back dramatically on what they're looking for in not restitution, but in like an armistice with Ukraine, and he's stepped it back considerably already. I think he understands that his military is not up to the job to occupy that country, especially since the citizens don't want them there. So I think he's gonna take a small win and go back home. Now, it's always possible that he tries to go into Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, and if he does that, then I think he's lost his ever-loving mind. But I don't know. Yeah. So blog Aubrey, he said regarding calcium, it's not the calcium, but the strontium 90 can replace calcium in the food chain and is used by the body the same. So stored in your bones, 28-year half-life is not great, but you need calcium. So what my understanding was when I did a video talking about this, is that if you take that calcium carbonate, like the Tums or whatever, and you eat that ahead of time, what'll happen is that your body will become saturated with that stuff, and then it won't collect as much strontium 90. That's what the paper that I was reading was suggesting anyway. Same thing with like apple pectin and Gaviscon, and these were all different chelating agents for different types of isotopes or whatever. James Sanick says use a hand pump. Yep. If you've got a shallow well, usually hand pumps will only go down 25 feet, I think. But if you do have a hand pump, you can definitely use that for water. Into the Wilderness says Superman wears a pair of reality survival underwear. That's pretty funny. Emergency survival tips. He asks, what is the best sources right now for daily Russia war news that's accurate? So I would say to you that none of it is likely highly accurate. That's not how you need to think about it. Think about collecting the information from multiple points of view and then processing the similarities and the common, what you see out of all of that. Synthesize that information to help you form your opinion on what's going on. And I did a video talking about just last week, I think, what was it called? What was it called? Hold on. It was called How to Find the Truth in a Sea of Fake News. And I went through like 50 different sources of information. I don't know what they all were, but several YouTube channels, several podcasts, blog sites, places to have where you can sign up for their email list and they'll send you information and all that kind of stuff. So you might want to check that video out. Okay. Question from Blogabre. What are your thoughts on surviving nuclear winter and sunlight reduction and therefore crop and food reduction? Estimates seem to suggest 40% reduction even after 5 years. I think all of it is just estimates. We don't know, right? We've never experienced nuclear winter. We've seen what volcanoes do. We've seen what tests do and all that kind of stuff. So we can make some fairly good estimates. But the funny thing about the Earth is that she has a way of keeping herself stable, so I don't really know for sure how bad it's going to be. My guess is that we will probably see people migrate further south into the coastlines. And that is simply going to be because of being able to fish and, and get food from the ocean and all that kind of stuff. Not that necessarily might be, completely the right answer, but if it was more than a limited exchange, it's probably going to be your only viable options for plentiful food sources, because there's not going to be a lot of crops and all that kind of stuff. Places, if you've got a greenhouse and all that kind of stuff, maybe you can, but you still got to have sunlight and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be difficult. There's going to be a lot of difficult decisions and to make and all that kind of stuff. The good thing is that that's really unlikely to happen. So, okay. David Vaughn says, hi, I watched other prepper channels as well, and some have said sandbags as a barrier for fallout at least 36 inches thick. What's your take on this? So I've done a couple of videos on fallout. You could probably go back and check those out where I talk about them more extensively. 36 inches of sand's great if you got it. But it may not be practical for everybody. Okay. And I'd recommend checking out that video because I covered it more at length. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. You want to use all three: time, distance, and shielding. So if you have a house with a basement, and it's a reasonably sized American home, suburbanite home or whatever, you're probably not going to, unless you were really close in, again, there's tons of variables here. Okay. So I'm just speaking in generalities. But if you're outside the blast zone, your house didn't have any window damage or anything like that because the pressure wave had dissipated, under whatever it is, 1 PSI or whatever breaks windows, 5 PSI, I can't remember. Then unless you just happen to be in a heavily fallout zone right downwind, you're probably not going to have enough fallout to constitute the need for building a, 36-inch sandbag bunker in the middle of your basement. All right. If you did that, you're going to be safer, no question. It's just a matter of what do you think is reasonable, and that's where you got to use good judgment. Whereas if you understand how fallout works and radiation works, and inverse square law and half-life and all that kind of stuff, which is the stuff that I've been trying to teach you guys on the general basics of all this stuff. And I have a whole playlist on all the videos that I did. And if you want to watch them all, I think you'll have a lot better understanding of all this. Then you can make informed judgments based off of where your house is, and then looking at the the prevailing winds, and make a judgment call on what you think you need to do. There isn't any way for me to say what's going to be best for your situation. I mean, if you want to try to make sure that you have zero radiation exposure, then go all out. If you think that this is a really low likelihood and it's not something that you're going to have to worry about, then just kind of think about where in your house is the best place to set it up, and then start identifying some good heavy mass in the house that you could use to pile up around you. It's a little bit more of a reasonable approach. So I hope that answers your question. If not, let me know. Joe says, I'm 55 miles east of Bellevue, Nebraska. I used to deer hunt out on the, what was the name of it? Iron Horse Golf Course. It's probably pretty close to your area. Great spot to deer hunt, by the way. What do I think that is going to be? Basically, he's saying, is it going to be targeted or anything like that? Well, so if Stratcom was a target, right? That's at Omaha. And if they were, which nobody knows what any targets are, right? We can all speculate and guess and all that kind of stuff, but essentially nobody knows. If Stratcom won, it seems like Stratcom is a reasonable assumption to make that they would be, targeted, because they control all the, the command and control for all the nuclear weapons and nuclear forces in the military. At 55 miles out, and you're also, you said north and northeast. So let's see, northeast. You're north. Oh, I was thinking you said northwest. So you're northeast. So that's going to be up more towards, it's going up towards Sioux City. You could, when you have southerly winds, you could potentially have some fallout issues. I don't think that you're close enough. I think you're far enough away that you're not going to have any issues with the initial blast. Potentially, when there are southern winds coming out, out of the south or wherever, then you could potentially have some potential fallout issues. If you were to the northwest, I would say that you probably wouldn't have any fallout issues, because generally the jet stream comes down and kind of goes like this, but sometimes you'll get those southern winds that'll kind of push it up that way. So you should have some plan for what you want to do, but I don't think it's going to be any kind of extreme amounts of radiation or anything like that. I mean, just my best guess. Bush Doctor Survival says, hey, where is the nearest Minuteman base to our location? I'm not sure where you're at, Bush Doctor Survival. But there's essentially 3 bases with nuclear missiles at them. This is all completely unclassified. It's easy to find. Just Google it. But it's F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne, and then you have Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota, and then you have Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. Those are the 3 bases where they have ICBMs in the ground. But there's other places that have, submarines and planes and all that kind of stuff. All right. What else did I miss? If I missed your question or something, just put it in all caps for me real quick. Oh, Bush Doctor's in Indiana. Okay. So yeah, where those places are then, because I just told you. So you're good to go. But Stephanie, listen, she says, oh my gosh, my son is at Ellsworth. Okay. First off, you have to understand, it is extraordinarily unlikely that there is going to be a nuclear exchange with Russia. Okay. It's just very, very, very unlikely. And you should not be concerned about this. I'm telling you that you really shouldn't be. It's not something to panic about or anything like that. The only reason we're talking about this is because everybody's worried about it. And I'm trying to let people know, look, this stuff is survivable. There's, just some basic information. You can get through this. It's not that big of a deal. Everybody tends to freak out about this stuff, and it's really not something that you need to be like all freaked out about. Okay, it's very unlikely that that's going to happen. Okay, so don't freak out. Paul Frank says, how long will water pressure last once electricity goes out? Well, it all depends, Paul. It depends on how many towers you have, and all that kind of stuff, how many water towers and what your system, how your system works. Is it a gravity fed system or is it not? Is it all done by pumps? Is it being pumped up from aquifers? I mean, there's lots of variables in how that works. Probably you can expect it to, I would say that it'll probably last a day or so, maybe 2 or 3, but that's hard to say for sure. If it was a big deal, like, a nuclear explosion or something like that, people are probably going to be filling up their, their bathtubs and everything like that all kind of at once. So it might be less, basically you would want to, as soon as something happened, assuming that it didn't happen in your town and the electricity and everything, the pump plant wasn't damaged and the towers weren't, taken out and all that kind of stuff. But, let's say if it happened a stay away or something like that, then go ahead and start filling up all your containers, or you can fill them now. You can fill them ahead of time if you want to. And that's fine. It's just that most people don't, have a whole bunch of storage place, for too much water. But if there was a detonation, I think it would be reasonable to go ahead and, like, if you have water bobs, to fill up your bathtubs and those kind of things, to go ahead and do that. And then if you had any additional water storage, then, go ahead and fill up your containers. Obviously, you should have some already stored in your house. Like, you should have enough for at least 2 weeks worth of your family in your house at all times. But not everybody has enough space, so it just kind of depends. Morris Venture says, I have a well and don't know how to get my well water. Well, if you have backup power for your house, then you should be able to just, put the transfer switch on your house, get your generator started, and it should just work. Shouldn't be any problem, especially if your house is protected with an EMP shield. I won't go through that again, but it should just work fine. If you've got a backup electricity source, there shouldn't be a problem with it. It's underground and all that kind of stuff. It's unlikely that's going to be affected unless you were really close to the detonation site and a localized EMP caused it to burn out. That's a possibility. But if you were out in the suburbs, out away, quite a ways from where the detonation site was, it shouldn't be a problem. Okay, I'm going to do a whole video on this, Art. He says, do you think they'll target nuke plants off the West Coast? So, who knows, man? I mean, like I said earlier, there's no way to know. Here's the thing with nuclear power plants, that they're not the big boogeyman that everybody thinks they are. Okay, there are multiple redundant systems within nuclear power plants to ensure that they don't have critical meltdown or catastrophic meltdowns here in our country. Thank you, Sniper. That's what I've been saying all night. It's very doubtful that they're going to nuke us. So I'll do the video. I'll save my comments for that video. But essentially, a lot of people really freak out about nuclear power plants. But here's the thing: nuclear fission's hard, and the people who built those things, they knew what they were doing, and they did a really good job. That's why we haven't had any instances of anybody die from nuclear power plant issues here in the United States. Even at 3 Mile Island, nobody died. We've never had a level 7 catastrophic meltdown. Look, 3 Mile Island was a level 5. So they think about these things and they train for these things all the time. Like, for real. They do it a lot. They do a lot of training. You can stop the fission process in just a few seconds with, putting in the cooling rods, and then they can also inject some sort of fluid into the reactor that'll also stop the fission and all that. And then they just have to keep the rods cool. And you can eliminate 94% of the heat just by stopping the fission. And so then you only have to deal with the extra 6%. And most of these plants are all built in such a manner that they can actually be flooded manually, and some of them automatically if a containment is about to go critical, and literally like physically flood the whole place, because that's why they're built by water. And they, in many instances, they build the containment unit below the level of where the water is so that it'll flood and it'll keep it cool. So you really don't have to freak out about this, about nuclear survival, or about power plants melting down and everything like that. All right. Just got the EcoFlow 1300. Yeah, that's a great little system. So South Florida DCL at Reality Survival. How well will plastic sheeting and duct tape work? For what? For keeping fallout out? Do you mean to keep fallout out? If that's the case, if that's what you're asking about, it'll work fine as long as your duct tape, holds and all that kind of stuff. But you don't have to tape up your whole room. Like I've seen a bunch of people talking about the idea, like they're going to seal off their whole room and everything like that. You only got to put duct tape up or something like that, just if you have a broken window or something. Like if you're fairly close to where the detonation site is or whatever, and a window gets blown out with debris or something from the blast wave, just tape over that window and keep the dust out. It's no big deal. You don't have to like get all crazy and worry about this. I mean, fallout as a general rule, it's going to be heavier particles and all that kind of stuff that comes down immediately. That's going to be the most dangerous stuff. That's the stuff you're really most concerned with. The dust and the lighter particles and all that are going to stay up in the atmosphere a little longer and all that. So they're dangerous, but it's not like it's not as bad as some of the heavier elements and stuff. Hunt Outdoors, Reality Survival. What's your feeling about the huge Walmart warehouse fire in Indy today? What do you think it'll do to local supplies? I saw the fire. I saw the flames from the fire, and it was a big fire, man. I was like, whoa, what is that? I don't know what will happen, though. I mean, there's a lot of redundancies with Walmarts and regional Walmarts and all that kind of stuff. It might make things bad for a little bit, at Walmart, but honestly, we don't really shop there all that much anyway. It's just, I don't like being at Walmart. So do I think it's going to cause some short-term supply chain issues? Probably. I mean, when we had gone to Walmart recently, there was already supply chain issues at Walmart, so I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, Utah Mike. That's the way to go. Solar backups. That's good stuff. Good stuff. All right. What else you guys got here? We're coming to an hour, so if you guys got any last minute questions, throw them in there. I'll try to get off here. What's up, bud? Oh, yeah. No, we're just wrapping up a live stream here. Okay. Well, if you guys don't have anything else, then I think that I'm going to get off here. Cool. Well, thanks for watching, guys. I sure appreciate it. As always, if you are interested in, stocking up on food and supplies and equipment and all that kind of stuff, check out the affiliate links in the description below. They'll send me a little money to help support the channel, and it won't cost you anything more. That's kind of the way that I've tried to structure this channel. I'm also going to try to, I'm going to try to do, like maybe at least Monday, Wednesday, potentially Friday live streams, for the next couple months or something like that. And I'm going to try to do them at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So we'll see how much I can stick to that. Sometimes I got a one-track mind and I get going on things and I forget about it, but I'm gonna try to do it. So yeah, it sounds like Angry Prepper's on next. You should go over and check out his channel. He's a cool dude. I got to meet him down there in Kentucky when I went out to take some stuff down to Bear that one time. He was a nice guy. I really like him. I got a video, Sniper. I got a video on how to purify your water with pool shock, if you'd like. Kind of goes through the whole process on how to do it and everything like that. All right, guys, I'm outie. Talk to you later. Don't forget to live 6 Ps. Proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. Stay safe.